solid waste represents pollution and unnecessary waste of resources. Solid waste can be divided into two types, industrial and municipal. Industrial waste is produced by mines, agriculture, and other industries. Municipal waste is produced by consumers and is often called garbage or trash. Hazardous waste can health problems and premature death. Hazardous and toxic waste threaten human health and the environment because they are poisonous, chemically reactive, corrosive, and flammable. Nuclear waste is another extremely dangerous waste that we still disagree on how to store and keep safe. 80 to 90% of the world's hazardous waste is produced by MDCs, and the U.S. leads the way. The U.S. has less than 5% of the world's population but produces 1/3 of the world's waste. Each day, the average American produces 4.5 pounds of waste. So the question is, how should we deal with solid waste? Two ways to deal with waste. One is waste management. We attempt to reduce the environmental impact of MSW without limiting how much is produced. Waste reduction is the second approach to dealing with solid waste. Much less waste or pollution is produced, and waste that is produced can be reused or recycled. Scientists agree that integrated waste management, that is a combination of both methods of dealing with waste, is best. Unfortunately, the U.S. does not use this method. This is an example of integrated waste management strategies suggested by scientists. Waste are reduced through recycling, reuse, composting, or managed by burying them in landfills or incinerating them. Most countries rely primarily on burial and incineration. Using a similar strategy could cut 70 to 95% of the solid waste we produce.
The 3 R's. Everyone knows 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. But what do they mean? From an environmental standpoint, reduce, which means to consume less and live a simpler lifestyle, and reuse are preferred because they tackle the waste problem before it happens. These are known as input or prevention approaches, while recycling is an output approach. These are two types of recycling. In primary or closed-loop recycling, recyclables are turned back into themselves. An old aluminum can become a new aluminum can. Secondary recycling. And secondary recycling products are converted into something else. For example, an old tire can be shredded and become road surfacing. The way most people recycle is by leaving a can out for pickup on the street. The trucks pick it up and take the materials to a materials recovery facility. These MRFs separate the materials by type, saving what is valuable and burning what is not for energy. MRFs are expensive to build, and because the only way they are economically feasible to be run is by being constantly fed with waste. They encourage waste production, the reverse of what is recommended. Instead of utilizing MRFs, we can use a tactic of source separation where consumers separate glass, aluminum, and plastics from each other before throwing them away. This method would create more jobs, be cheaper, and yield more energy. Some cities, such as San Jose, have begun encouraging this form of recycling by implementing a fee per bag or pay-as-you-throw waste collection system. This charges households and businesses for MSW, but not for separated recyclables. Composting is a form of natural recycling. Decomposed bacteria take biodegradable organic material and slowly break it down into a rich natural fertilizer that can be spread on soil to provide plants with nutrients, slow soil erosion, retain water, and improve crop yields. Like citywide recycling projects, lots of European and Canadian cities have citywide composting. One of the few American cities that has a citywide composting program is Portland, Oregon, where they have weekly composting and recycling, and every other week trash is collected. While recycling down has its advantages such as saving energy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and saving landfill space amongst others, it also comes with some trade-offs. Disadvantages of recycling include higher costs, loss of money, and a reduction in profits for owners and others. One of the main issues with recycling and reuse is that it is not always economically sensible to do so. This is due to the fact that we have a false, misleading system in which the market price of a good does not factor in the environmental and health costs of the material. Another issue is the uneven economic playing field that hinders recycling and reuse. Large companies can receive tax breaks and subsidies from the government for finding and utilizing new material instead of reusing and recycling old ones. A third factor in hindering recycling and reuse is the fluctuating supply and demand, and thus price. Buying recycled materials is not a priority for most consumers. Business and governments making the price for recycled goods change rapidly.
Incineration is a technique used to deal with the growing mountains of trash we produce. Incineration can be used to create electricity by heating up water to create steam and move a turbine. It also deposits all ash, dirty water, and other byproducts into one place, which allows for easy treatment and containment. In countries, incineration is the top method of dealing with solid waste. 90% of MSW in Great Britain is burned in incinerators, but only 16% of waste in the United States is burned for energy. Some countries have become so great at recycling, they have been deemed too good at it. Sweden has begun importing waste from its European neighbors in order to keep its incinerators fed and running. 99% of Sweden's waste is turned into energy, and as a result, they have been able to heat 20% of the homes and power 250,000 more on trash power alone. Like anything else, though, there are trade-offs. Yes, incineration reduces trash volume, does not pollute water, and allows for safe sale of energy, but it also is expensive to build, can pollute the air, and encourages waste production. The alternative to incineration is burying solid waste in landfills. There are two types of landfills: open dumps and sanitary landfills. Open dumps are essentially holes in the ground where garbage is dumped, widely used in LDCs. In sanitary landfills, waste is placed in layers and compacted daily with a layer of clay or foam to keep it dry and reduce leachate from the landfill. Leachate that does not escape is pumped back into the surface for treatment, and then the methane that is released as an energy of the compacted waste is also pumped back to the surface for use of energy. Utilizing landfills comes with advantages and disadvantages as well. Advantages include how fast one can be built, the low cost, and how much waste can be processed and stored here, and disadvantages include the release of greenhouse gases unless they are collected, the slow decomposition rate, and it will eventually leak and contaminate groundwater. Dealing with hazardous waste have issues all on their own. Immediately after collecting hazardous waste, we have to detoxify them. In order to do this, there are many methods. Physical methods, such as using charcoal and distilling liquids to filter out harmful solids and chemicals, respectively. Chemical methods that use chemical reactions to change super harmful stuff into less harmful stuff. Biological methods that utilize armies of microorganisms to break down hazardous chemicals. The greenest method for breaking down hazardous waste is an approach called phytoremediation. In phytoremediation, plants that have been labeled as pollution sponges absorb, filter, and remove contaminants such as pesticides and radioactive or toxic metals from polluted soil and water. Advantages of phytoremediation include how little energy it requires, low cost, and ease of establishment, but drawbacks include that it is a slow process, it is only effective as deep as the roots of the plants can reach, and the plants can become toxic to animals. Instead of treating our hazardous waste, the cheapest and most common way to deal with them is by storing them. The most common form of burial is deep well disposal. Liquid hazardous wastes are pumped deep into the ground, far below the groundwater, and, in theory, beneath the layers of impermeable clay. However, scientists agree that regulation of these sites is inadequate and the wastes find unique ways to leak into the water anyway. The other method of storing our waste is through surface impoundments. These are pits, ponds, or lagoons in which liquid hazardous waste is stored. These impoundments are supposed to be lined and protected, but 70% of the storage basins in the U.S. are not, and 90% threaten groundwater. Even the ones that are lined are subject to massive storms or earthquakes that can lead to leaking. Eventually, they will all leak.
The most important thing to take away from this is that although it would be difficult, managing waste is possible. Regardless of what waste it is, the most effective way to deal with it is to simply produce less of it. Stop the problem at its source. Let's help ensure environmental justice and an idea where every person is entitled to protection from environmental hazards regardless of race, age, gender, and national origin for all.